right, well, I think it's about time to get started. Holly, if you want to get ready. My name is David Moore with the Idaho Technology Council, and we will start here momentarily. This is something we previously were doing monthly in person, but of course we've transitioned to online, and we're able to speed it up a little bit and do every 2 weeks, which is great. Last week we had Rob Tuft on kind of Kanban, Scrumban, different things, what works for you. And now we're going to be able to hear from Holly from Access Idaho discussing the transition from, and I've been in the office, so I've witnessed it there at Access Idaho, post-it notes everywhere, like all the walls covered in them. Everybody's project was managed that way. COVID-19 happens. Of course, everybody's work from home. How do you transition that over? I mean, that's a lot of work, and that's what we're going to find out and more, I'm sure, from Holly. So Holly, go ahead and take it away.
Sure. Go ahead and share my screen. I'm Holly, project manager at Access Idaho. Let's see. Come on. There we go. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah, if you want to, you could probably put it in presentation mode too. Perfect. Awesome.
Good. I'm not used to my screen, so with the zoom over my slides, I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Today, as David said, we're going to talk a little bit about how a small office went from in-person to Zoom in less than a week. We went from daily stand-ups, post-it notes, the whole bit, to all Zoom. And said, I've been in Access Idaho about 14 years now. It'll actually be 14 years this month, which is hard to believe. So I've got to help work on a lot of projects here, and we've changed processes several times, but I think we finally found one that works for us. And today, I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we adapted the process to fit our business and how that process kind of came to be, and how we ended up developing two kind of separate processes, one for project management and one for our daily operations and maintenance functions. And then how we took that process and moved it from in-person stand-ups and sprint reviews to all Zoom and all virtual, and how we're trying to maintain our company culture in a Zoom world since we don't get to see each other and hang out every day. But first of all, I'll talk a little bit about Access Idaho. It's a little bit unique, and it'll probably help you understand why we've structured our office the way we have. Access Idaho started in December 1999, and it's a public-private partnership between the state of Idaho and our parent company, NIC. So our only partner client is the state of Idaho, and we work with state government agencies, boards, commissions, city and county departments. And in those 20 years, we've saved $56 million to the state of Idaho. We have produced 293 online services for 363 state government partners and 162 local partners. So the services, or some of the services we provide to those partners, are payment processing, application development, user testing, web design and consulting, customized reports, and local customer service and support. And as you can see, that's a lot of services. And that's all supported by a staff of 13. So we had to find a way to get our products to market faster, and we had to find a way to be as efficient as we can. The staff breakdown here is a development team of 6. 2 of those are a sysadmin and our director of development. We have a creative team of 2, and that team of 2 manages and maintains the state homepage, idaho.gov. They also manage the state's social media presence, and they provide all of the WordPress and website templates that are available for state agencies to use. So that team of 2 is pretty impressive, and they continue to produce really cool stuff. We have a marketing team of 3, And primarily support our county and city implementations. They drive all over the state to do training and help people with reporting and reconciliation and anything that they might need. They will drive anywhere you need them to go. In some cases, they'll fly a can and drive to a county office, but we're always here to help. We have a project management team of 1, so I'm it, and a general manager. So we all live here, we all work here, we all play here. So we want to do the best to support our citizens and the agency use us. So we will answer the phone and we will show up at your office, and it's just kind of the way we operate. So when I first got here, and I guess David, you can go ahead and start the poll. When I first got here, Access Idaho was pretty much a waterfall organization. And we went through some ups and downs, and we did the due diligence, we met with partners, we wrote requirements, we made prototypes, the code, the integration, and all that stuff. But we'd get to the testing phase and there'd be surprises. It might not have been what I was expecting, maybe not quite what our user experience person was expecting. So what we would do at time is we'd put our changes in, we'd get a product that we thought was stable, and we get really excited to show it to the agency. And they would look at it and they'd be, that's cool, but what about this retired user? How does he go through the system? And what about this military exempt person? How do they go through the system? Well, none of that was ever in the documentation or the requirements we had stuff up front. So I would ask them, well, how does this person renew today? Oh, they get the blue paper in their envelope. I was like, okay. And so can I see the blue paper? And there's a whole nother set of requirements for this different user type. Come to find out there was a green paper and an orange paper and a yellow paper. So we thought we'd completed that. But by the time we get to the agency UAT, we had all of these users that nobody had told us about. Because of our contract with the state, we provide all of our services at no cost. And I don't have the ability to expand and contract my team. So I can just create a work order and charge them for the change of scope. And in most cases, agencies are not really willing to go with the 80-20 rule. They don't want to prove it for production until it's in their mind 100%. So I went to Jeff and I was like, Jeff, we need to figure something out because this has happened several times and it just wasn't productive. And the UAT and testing phase was taking twice as long, sometimes 3 times as long as the rest of the phases in the project. So I went, got my Scrum Master. We started working on bringing more of a Scrum format into the office. And we started working on, what we can do to make it better. All right, I'm going to sound like a Scrum idiot, but if I'm in presentation mode, how do I see the polls responses? Is there a way to do that? Benny? All right, well, we'll just keep going. So we started to kind of look at a true Scrum model. And I tried to force our business into that 2-week sprint. I tried to force them into a sprint review every 2 weeks, a retrospective. It wasn't quite going as I expected. And I was really trying to force our business to fit that true Scrum process versus really evaluating what we needed. So in the wise words of Rob Tuft from last week, I realized that the Scrum police were not going to arrest me. And I kind of had to sit back and evaluate our goals. And really our goals were, we needed fewer surprises. We need to incorporate our customer and our partners into the process sooner instead of waiting till final UAT to have this big, look what we made for you. We wanted to break the work into sizable chunks so we could see the progress sooner. identify impediments as soon as they come up versus, sometimes impediment will come up and it just gets shoved aside and shoved aside and shoved aside and it's never dealt with until the very end. And that doesn't really work out very well sometimes either. I wanted to collect and implement the feedback sooner. And I wanted to try and demo a potentially shippable product at the end of each sprint. So, what that looks like. Aha, there we go. Now you should be able to see the polls. All right, sorry about that. So anyway, after we kind of revamped and adjusted our process to a more scrummish process, this is what this looked like. And we kind of follow a Scrum, Kanban, hybrid. We create our entire backlog, or at least what we know at the beginning of a project, and we size it. So we can kind of provide a decent timeline, and we've gotten a lot better at providing pretty accurate timelines as we go. We pull those items into our sprint backlog. We write and size the user stories together, but each team member is actually responsible for writing their tasks for themselves. You can see the documents hanging off the board. In the lower right, those are usually the mock-ups of the prototypes, and it's how we validate the actual task against the prototype and make sure we have an accurate definition of done. So this is pretty much what we came up with, and it was working pretty well, but not as well as I would have liked. We were finding out that we would have a sprint review, we'd pull the work into the sprint, we'd get to the end of our iteration, and only 2 of those user stories were completed. And I was trying to figure out, why aren't we getting better at completing the amount of work that we think we can do? And it kind of turns out that when I talked to the developers about this, it was other maintenance and operations activities, because I really have 4 developers in the office. It's not, they don't have the luxury of just working on one project at a time or supporting one product at a time. So they might have to take a break from the current project work to help an agency that has an upcoming license renewal. And that license renewal has legislative changes. Those legislative changes might have taken a week, but the agency went straight to that developer, and I didn't know, my boss didn't know, and developers want to help. So they're just coding away. Come to turn out, the project work's not getting done. So what we did was we took what we liked from the Scrum model and the task model, and we started what we call our operations Scrum board. It's actually probably kind of a mix of Kanban and Scrumban. But the goal of this tool is to get more transparency in the office. Every single person, every morning, has their chance to talk about what's going on and what they need. I wanted a safe place for people to ask for help. And a lot of times it'll even be a question that they don't know how to answer. But a lot of my coworkers, myself included, have been with Access Idaho 14 plus years. So there's a good chance that somebody there knows that answer. And it was just a faster way to get those questions answered in the morning before work really began. Each member has the opportunity to say what's not started, what's in progress, what's needed, and need help with. So what that looks like is similar to the big Scrum board: no user stories, no backlogs. Everybody has their name on the board, and everybody has a place to put their items and kind of verbalize what they're going to do today. And it's a good visual way for us to assess all the work that's going on in the office, whether it's project work, maintenance work, operation work, emergencies, and really the emergencies or the Kanban, right? If you have an issue, a security issue, or wall issue, payments aren't processing, those items get pulled first, and then we work our way through prioritizing the rest of the day. So following this model for the last, I think 3 or 4 years, and it's been working well for us. We're getting market faster, they're production ready faster, we're covering our investment on them faster. There's good communication in the office, the transparency is getting better, but then COVID-19 starts to hit, and we're starting to know that something's going to happen, but we're not sure what. My poll's still going. Okay. Sorry, checking my polls. So everybody, we heard about COVID-19, but we didn't really know what this meant. And I'll admit, I was that person that thought, oh, it won't happen to me. I'm healthy. It'll be fine. And then my husband's company started effectively working from home March 1st. His company is more global. They have offices in Europe, Italy, China. It's like, okay, maybe this is a little more serious than we think. And I started to think about, what can we do to keep this process moving forward? Nobody's going to take all these notes home and put them on their walls. And we need to figure this out. So I needed to find something that was going to be easy for everybody to add their individual tasks, because I don't have time to add those for them. And I needed a quick implementation. So I really started thinking about this first week of March. And I think our last day in the office was St. Patrick's Day. I think it was March 17th. I wanted to leverage tools that I already had and was familiar with. And that tool was Basecamp. I'd been using Basecamp for about the last 12 years, and that was currently where I was tracking user stories and tracking the tasks, but I was tracking the iterations and the user stories there. And I found out that they actually have partnerships with a couple other companies, and I found one, they have a partnership with Scrum, which provides your virtual Scrum board via an API. It was very cost effective. I think I pay $8.99 a month for the Scrum tool. And it seems to be working pretty well. And this is kind of what it looks like. So Basecamp here on the left. And I can do a demo when we're done if anybody wants to see that. I'll try to do it through the screenshots, but you can let me know. Everybody in Basecamp gets their own to-do list for the operation Scrum. You can kind of see my list here. I update it as needed every day or sometimes throughout the day. And then when that imports into Scrum, it comes into, each task comes into that virtual Scrum board as a card. And then every morning at 10 o'clock, we all convene on Zoom and we move our tasks just like we did at the office. The project board works a little bit different. So the to-dos in the project board are actually written as a user story. So we have our traditional user stories, and the developers, creative team, financial team, they can go in and add the tasks that they need to do so we can move that user story to done as we iterate through it. When I import these to-dos into Scrum it imports them all into the backlog, and then we can move the cards for each sprint or each iteration as we go. And then the card in progress, you can click on that and we can see the tasks that have been completed for that card. So that's how we're iterating through projects. And it's working pretty well. Like I said, there's a lot of tools that do similar things. This was just a good mix for us because it was cost effective and I was already using Basecamp to do a lot of my project logging. The way this kind of started and the way we kind of iterated through it, it wasn't perfect. I think Jeff was out of town. The week before St. Patrick's Day, he came back into the office. I immediately asked for his credit card. We implemented Scrum Do, and we did a Scrum in our conference room, and I introduced everybody to the tools. The next day we tried it, and I think our Scrum was over an hour, so that was not going to work. So we kind of iterated through the process to have what we have today, and it seems to be working pretty well. But there's definitely some lessons learned and some things I know that I would change going forward as we see how long we're going to kind of be in work mode. So I kind of have a short retrospective here as to how stuff has worked out and the lessons that I've learned. I have reached out to my team, development teams, creative teams, and some of these are my own. Some of these came in a team. And in some cases, we feel that communications actually improved a little bit. People are jumping onto instant messenger faster than they were if they were in the office, and we're able to communicate that way. It's kind of removed the work from home stigma that was existing. I think some folks in the office had the stigma that, do people really work from home? Is this really something that's acceptable? And I think the answer there is yes. In a lot of cases, I think some of us are actually working more than we were when we were actually going into the office. My favorite quote was that we get yoga twice a week now. And I'll get back to the yoga. The bad is that I am finding that it's twice as much work for me to manage the virtual Scrum board as it is to just all meet, stand up, everybody's responsible for their stuff. We can move it, we can rearrange it, and move forward with our day. I also miss that we don't all work together to rearrange and pull those sprints together. And I also, in my own opinion, I don't think people look at their base camp as often as I did when I would see them walk up to the boards, look at the list, and see what they had to do that day. A lot of my team is on this call, and I am going to open it up to them. But I think a lot of times what's happening is, oh no, it's 9:30. I need to go update my tasks before the meeting at 10. I don't know if people are checking it throughout the day, like I've seen with the actual big physical board. Oh, whoa, oh no, I ruined it. Let's see, we also have had feedback that it's taking a lot more time, and in some cases that is. And I do have some ways to kind of fix that, because currently we're doing a creative team Scrum, followed by the operations Scrum, and then we go into the projects after that. But because I'm not saying this one's at 10, this one's at 10:15, this one's at 10:30, and structured, people just kind of call in, and a lot of people are like, well, I didn't really need to hear that. Tell me what time. So I think going forward, if we're looking at this model long term, I'll probably rearrange how I'm handling the project Scrums. And some of the developers have said one thing they've noticed is that it's taking them more time before they ask for help. They will sit and work on something for a lot longer, where if they were in the office, they would have just yelled across the room that they needed help with something. The ugly is kind of like I said, we miss the interaction of writing the user stories and the tasks and kind of rearranging them and coming together as a team to agree, yes, this is what we want. I'm finding that when we do that virtually, people just want to get off the call. We're not really taking the time and looking at it. It's just like, yep, looks good to me. Let's get off this call. This one made me laugh. The satisfaction of moving it myself. Like, feel more satisfaction when I pick it up off the board and physically move it to the done column. And just again, the in-person collaboration. So back to the yoga and how we're trying to deal with the ugly part of this and keeping in contact with each other and collaborating with each other. We're trying to make it fun and maintain our culture. Every Friday, we have a yoga instructor that comes to the office and teaches yoga in front of the Scrum board. And we have really good office participation. more than half of the office usually participates. And since we lost that, we went a week without yoga. And I had talked to Jeff, my supervisor, and said, Jeff, what do you think of Zoom yoga? And so we tried it and we had good feedback. And Jeff was kind enough to open it up and say, well, during this time, let's go ahead and bring in yoga twice a week. So now we get yoga on Wednesday and Fridays. And you can see it's changed. You know, we used to do yoga in front of our calendars and our Scrum board, and now we're doing it with our dogs and our kids, and it's awesome. And it's kind of a nice break in the middle of the day to talk to each other and see how everyone's doing. We've also done, my team's gonna kill me, fun happy hour games. We try to do a happy hour maybe every other week, try to think of a fun game or something silly. This one was wear your best hat. I'm there in my Scrum hat. And if anybody wants to share, you know, any other ideas they're doing to make their office more together, more collaborative during this time, I'd love to hear those because I'm always looking for new ideas. I don't know if my team wants to keep up with funny hats. We have done bingo, and I think our next one is going to be a coloring contest. So we're kind of working on that. So if anybody else has any amazing ideas, I would love to hear those. And that pretty much wraps up my presentation.
Paul, I have a question if you don't mind.
Sure. Hang on one second. I find my questions page. Yeah, ask away.
So on the part where you talked about, you know, the good and the bad and whatnot, I noticed that you mentioned collaboration, you know, being kind of a difficult part. And I think that a lot of us felt that, you know, especially a couple weeks in, it's like, okay, well, can we really do this via Zoom and shared docs? How do you feel that's progressed over the last, you know, 6 or so weeks where, because I found personally that sometimes something seemed impossible like a month and a half ago, and it's like, I think we can make that work now. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are and what your experience has been over the time.
It's definitely getting better, and we're finding ways to be more efficient with it. As far as the mock-ups and getting requirements and stuff like that, it's even come down to where I was working with some developers the other day, and I was trying to portray what I wanted. I don't think they knew 100%, and I actually just ended up drawing a quick prototype on a piece of paper. I took a picture of it with my phone and uploaded it into Slack. So we're finding ways to share those documents and move them back and forth. I just find that it's just taking more time. It's working, stuff's definitely getting done. It just is more time consuming. And I guess that kind of brings me to my last question, and that is, has anybody moved from a physical to an online, and do you have a preference one way or the other? I've seen advantages to both. And I'm sure we're going to keep iterating forward through this process as we see COVID, you know, continue and what it's going to look like when we go back into the office. And I'm going to have to figure that out, and I'm going to work with my team and figure out what they would like to see and keep moving forward. But I would love to know what people think of physical versus virtual.
Feel free to unmute yourselves too if you have a question or would like to interact.
If there's anybody from my team, I don't know, what do you guys think? I know Russell's on there, and he's been with me for 14 years, the whole time I've been here, and he's put up with a lot of changes and my crazy suggestions and what's worked and what hasn't worked.
I would say that going to online has actually been really nice, and I've been working off of your sketches, which is kind of funny, but it works really well. It's no different than having a packet dropped off on your desk that's, you know, a list of to-dos of what you want. So just having some basic outline of this is the design we want, even if it's just a sketch, just makes it fast and easy to develop.
For those of you on the question I asked, if you use the virtual Scrum board, does the Scrum Master or the PM move the tasks? For the team members moving the tasks, how is that working? Does everybody just pull the board up on their screen and move them? Or are you taking control of the screen and moving them? Anybody?
So Holly, I'll jump in. That's kind of an awkward situation because I've seen it both ways. And so when we get into a Scrum or our sprint review and we'll say, hey, you should have updated your tasks by now. And then they go off to their browser and they update it directly and they say, well, go ahead and refresh on your side, Scrum Master. And I'm like, oh, yeah, there it is. In fact, I used to play that trick on my Scrum Master all the time. I'm like, I updated it, just refresh. So that is awkward. And
there's 3 of them.
but I think it just comes down to what's the consensus of the team, what works for the team, as long as there's collaboration. And I wanted to make a comment about your Scrum board. This is a fantastic picture, by the way.
Okay. Are you looking at the
of
board
your-
degree or the loan?
Of your Scrum board, and
Are we not
there's
paying off
a
the
real
DoD
sense of
box?
collaboration when you can get up
Okay.
together as a
Good.
team on a whiteboard
Okay.
and or a Scrum board and move things around, or jump over to a whiteboard and then wireframe or draw diagrams and arrows, and that gets lost in a virtual world, right? I haven't found a really good whiteboarding tool in Zoom. There are some things, but it's really awkward with the mouse. And I even tried a stylus, and I'll pull over a whiteboard and I'll draw it up, or I'll take a pen and pad and write out and scan. Same things you've done. What I have found work pretty well, and in our business, we have to be all virtual because we have folks in India and we have folks in Meridian, and we also have folks that we work with our clients, and like we work side by side with them, so in a virtual way, and so we really are forced into that virtual world. But what has worked for us is if we find a mockups tool like mockups.com, and there's a lot of wireframing out there that you can do, and also cost effective, where we will jump into the tool at the moment where the creativity starts, and we'll say, okay, wait a minute, let me draw that out. And it's not as free flowing and creative, but it's the best we can do. And then also once that's been drawn in the mockups online tool, then you have it saved and you can create a link to it from your story. And then you can send off a review, pull them up again. So it would be really sweet if you could, like your picture you show here, with the Scrum board and then the virtual Scrum board, is like tie them together. Wouldn't it be cool to have, right? You're all there together in your Scrum team, and you can get up to the board and you can move things around, and that the juices are just going. And then also automatically update your Scrum board virtually so you can view it later. Or for those folks that want to go back, like so say they went home for the day or something, they just can't see the board, they go virtually to the board in Basecamp or whatever.
Yeah.
So, or you're working with somebody else that's not in your office, your client or something. So that would be cool if we could invent such a tool, because I see there's definitely pros and cons, right? Trade-offs.
There is. I also want a tool where we can just say, hey, Siri, move AI 7 to done, and it would just do it for me. So if somebody could invent that, that would be amazing.
That's
We
more
are
realistic.
aware.
Sounds like something good for an Alexa integration.
Right?
Let's see. I'm going to jump in real quick just from a management standpoint. I think my 2 anxieties going forward is number one is when we begin to work with a state agency as a client, we used to bring them in and do, sprint reviews with them. They could sit with us on the board. They could see that. We could get their feedback unfiltered. It was give and take, very collaborative effort to have that agency discovering their requirements as they looked at the pictures on the board, and that kind of give and take that's in person. I think one of the questions in my mind is moving forward. If we have a client, let's say, Fish and Game, and we're working on some sort of online service for Fish and Game, and you kind of have that kind of self-discovery of conversation, virtual or in person, or kind of as people feel comfortable meeting or not meeting, that's kind of the question going forward is how do we, we're gonna have to think through is how do we draw out requirements, how do we build these user stories, and in kind of a hybrid world of potentially virtual and in person. And kind of the same thing is as I look at bringing the staff back into the office, and 10% comes in, 20%, 50%, as we slowly open the office up, we're going to go from all virtual to a hybrid, which is we might have some people in office, so we can have that physical movement of the stickers. And then how do we translate that back? And so I don't have the answers yet, but I think some of the challenges is not only was it a challenge, go from paper to virtual, but now potentially dealing with a hybrid world, both from a employee management and project management, and also even working with new clients. So those are things I'm wrestling with, and I'm going to have to iterate through with the help of my team. So just kind of those are my just kind of general thoughts with the open-ended for the group.
And that's the nice thing about the Post-it notes. And it's funny, I just find when you start with the virtual, you kind of lose your audience. But if I have a client or partner come into our office and we look at our sprints and the amount of work in there, and they bring new work in, and that's their chance to do that is in those iterations. We write out the user story, and I was like, okay, this is what we prioritized at the beginning of this project. Where does this go? What do you want to push back? And really having that visual and watching them help us move it, it really makes them think about their choices, and it really makes them think about what is the most important thing. And I find that when you have a big meeting and it's virtual and your screen's up there, you're going to lose that effect. It's interesting how that changes things, just to have that kind of presence.
Yeah, and just for background, I mean, all of our clients are government entities, and their business rules are provided by legislation and by state code and statute. So, when it comes to pivoting and thinking outside the box, there are some bumpers and boundaries they have to stay within. And so getting them to, and so as we work with our customers and clients, it really is kind of those things where you really have to have those conversations like, what can we do that's within the rule of law? What can we do to help our citizens? Do we need to bring your deputy AG in to make sure I don't get arrested by taking off this kind of, pivoting and going this direction? So, that's why it's so critical is how do we coach kind of the brick and mortar government style into this virtual and hybrid style. I think that's really one of the challenges we're going to be thinking a lot of this summer.
So, yeah. Looking at the polls real quick here. So it looks like about half the group has moved from Waterfall to Scrum. So half of us know how painful that process can be. And it's like 29% for the physical, 71% for the online Scrum board, which is interesting.
I just wanted to say, Holly, I missed the colors of all the stickies. I liked all the blue, red, yellow, pink, all the different colors, and that's now gone.
I don't know. Rob,
That's a minor thing.
Code your sticky notes? That's funny. Anybody else?
Just real quick, I think one of the kind of cultural things that that I've observed is that it is difficult for people to pick up the phone and call somebody, and I find that people will sink their teeth into something and not let it go because they want to be polite and not interrupt somebody by Slack or by phone. And so I think rather than just kind of walking by and plopping down in a chair and just having a conversation. So I think one of the challenges is, it's a classic one, is teaching me it's okay to ask for directions early and not get way lost in something. And, you know, making sure that there's an encouragement of, you know what, you're going to solve the problem faster if you make a quick phone call versus like saying, well, I'll wait a couple hours and then I'll do a Slack. And if I don't hear anything, I'll wait till the next day, or I'll just keep thinking and working. I just need 5 more minutes on this. I think combining the concept of time boxing with the concept of, you know, giving people emotional permission to dial the phone and reach out because they fear somebody might be bothering somebody at home. I think that's definitely, because we were in office and going virtual, is something we need to work on culturally and kind of rethink and re-educate and make sure people have that conversation, which is 100% remote offices. Everybody's really good about like, oh, just jump on Slack. I'll hit this person, I'll Slack that person, I'll call them. And I think, again, just making sure the team knows those barriers have been removed and it's okay to make that outreach sooner rather than later, I think is something I need to definitely encourage from a management style.
I know that at least with myself and the development team, they're probably tired of me because I Slack call them multiple times a day. And Slack has that cool tool where you can write on their screen, and that's kind of a developer's worst nightmare. But the Slack calling and the interface for on the screen with Slack has really been kind of cool. Anything else? Well, that's all I have for today. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much, Ollie, for coming in and sharing that story. It was a lot to think about too. And you know, as you wrapped up, kind of thinking about what the future looks like. You know, as we come out of this, like everybody's talked about how we're going to go back to office. You know, and a lot of companies that I've talked to are you know, saying, well, we're going to do it mid-June, we're going to do it end of June or whatnot. But what does that look like now? Because we have all been kind of, you know, thrust into these new tools and these new ways of doing things. And there's a lot, I think, that we've learned that we don't need to be in office for, and there's a lot that we've learned that we miss about being in office. So it'll be an interesting time. Would like to take a moment, of course. We do have another one scheduled 2 weeks out. We don't have the registration open just yet, but it'll be a fun one. We're actually going to have some user experience professionals come in and do more of an interactive. So we're actually going to break out into smaller groups. We'll be using a kind of like a whiteboarding thing, tool, kind of like what Rob was talking about earlier, how he hasn't found one he really likes. So hopefully, Rob, hopefully you're around in 2 weeks, because maybe you'll find one you do like when we test this one out. So keep an eye on that. And we are putting these over onto YouTube too. So definitely encourage, just search Idaho Technology Council. You can find our YouTube channel super, super easy. Please subscribe. I'm trying to get us up enough to where I can get a custom extension on the URL. And there's, of course, other content on there too. Jay Larson's in here. We've got Innovation Matters that happens every Thursday, and then also gets posted through there as well. And then
there's a question on chat if the slides would be made available. So if you want Holly to send the slides to you and you can distribute to anybody that is requesting them, would that be helpful? Okay.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. And then one of the things on the to-do list for me is to get this onto the website as well. So we're going to host it on YouTube, but also on the website. We're going to make a spot for that. And then I can put a little spot to even download the slides, maybe a PDF. So it'll be great. And then I have to do something for Zach Olson specifically. Alexa, play Big Band.
You are too late, my friend. I actually muted it.
Oh, did you?
Yep. After you said Alexa the first time, it started trying to like listen. So I hit mute and I was like, no, it's the same thing that my staff does to me all the time.
Oh, really? I was too late.
It hit my Alexa, so thanks, David.
Oh, you're welcome. Jay, do you have any comments before we wrap up?
No, I thought this was great, Holly. Thanks for doing that. I know that it's very, very good, and this is fantastic. We'll have to really look forward to everybody kind of helping build this network. And I love doing virtual. We're going to try to do even more where we bring people from Eastern Idaho and Northern Idaho into this. So there's a broader consortium throughout the state. So people trying to do similar things on what Spark's doing. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody. Keep an eye out. Also, feel free to follow us on Eventbrite so you can get notifications. And thanks again. Happy weekend, everybody.